Well, hello. Today I'd like to talk a little bit about care and training of a high energy large breed dog, uh, specifically Doberman Pinschers. When puppy leaves me, they've been crate trained, and pretty much I'm an early riser and my wife stays up later at night. And so what generally happens is around 11 o'clock at night, she's going to be toileting them before she goes to bed. And I'm waking up at 5 or 6 in the morning and the puppies going out right away in the morning. So these puppies have had success at being in a crate for 6 to 7 hours. And like I say, when they go in a crate, first thing in the morning, as soon as they're going to come out, they're outside. And we've had good luck with that. So with that in mind, if you have a puppy and he or she's able to go for 7 hours at night without having an accident, well, then they could go 7 hours at any given point in time and day. So, with that in mind, it's a good idea to have your dog confined. And if you want to minimize and do the house training and make sure that there's not accidents, you want to create an environment for success. So basically, if you have your animal, your puppy, confined and let them outside right away, and that's a good time to after they go outside and go to the bathroom, probably a good time to feed them, and then it's a good time to have them outside again and possibly go out and do some playing outside. And these high energy dogs, they're going to be needing stimulation and they need to burn off energy in a positive way. And if you've got an environment, let's suppose you've got a fenced yard with just grass, and it's you know however big, I don't know, some smaller parcel, or even if it's kind of decent size but it's all groomed, there's not going to be a lot of stimulation there for the animal. And so what's going to happen? I don't know, probably going to be chewing at the fence and digging holes in the yard, and possibly, if you're on a busy street, barking at people going up and down the street. And that's not really the kind of positive behavior you're looking for, or the stimulation is probably the better word. However, or let's talk about if somebody like has a 10 by 10 um, large exercise pen, as Agway or Tractor Supply would call them. And to think that you're going to put gravel or concrete, or if you have grass, it's going to turn to mud. But suppose you have your dog in one of these 10 by 10 areas, it's going to get pretty darn bored. And a bored dog, that's not good for the stimulation or to burn off the energy. So the biggest key to having a successful training would be to have the energy be able to be burned off in a positive way. So if now we've talked about if you had in a kennel, or if you had a yard that's fenced and it doesn't have lots of stimulation there. But if let's suppose you've got a yard that's backed up to some woods, or you have woods on your property. Well, think about the animals could go out there and chase after a squirrel or chipmunk, or go out there and start digging because this chipmunk just went into the ground. So there's lots of stimulation to go on, and there's all kinds of things that are going to keep the dog active and energetic or burn off that energy. Another option is if you have more than one dog and you have a decent size. So if you had a groomed yard and you had more than one dog, well, the dogs are going to keep each other busy, and they're going to be playing with each other, and they're going to be, having, their little squabbles or whatever they have, and they're going to be running around and playing and burning off all this energy in a positive way. Well, when you have those kind of environments where you have like the stimulation, whether it's from woods or whether it's from another animal, the thing is that puts less burden on you for that stimulation. And if you don't have those things, well, then you better have another method to get that energy burned off, whether that's taking them to a dog park, or taking them to a place where you can having a safe space where you can throw ball, It's even a good idea if there's a hill to be throwing it up the hill and let them go run up the hill and then bring it back to you, or whether that's frisbee or balls, or to even have those tennis ball launchers where you put the ball in and then it's able to throw it a lot farther. Those work well. So you have to get a way to burn off that energy. It's probably more effective having them sprint after a ball or frisbee than it is to just take them for a walk. Now, don't get me wrong, walking is a great thing, and it's certainly something you want to do with your dog. But to actually burn off that energy, you want to do that in a way that where they're like, got their heart rate up and stuff, and it's like you. If you're going to burn off energy, or you're going to exercise, you want to get your heart rate up. Well, the dog running and jumping around is going to get a lot more energy, or a lot more, burn off that energy a lot more than a dog that's just going for a walk at your speed. So, basically we've talked about stimulation, and we've talked about the energy and the exercise. And we also talked about how if you get a puppy from me, how they'll be crate trained when they come to you. So um, the important thing is that when you have them in your house, you want to create an environment for success. So basically, let's suppose that you want to have your dog and you want them in the living room and you want them on the couch, and you have a nice rug in there and stuff or whatever. Well, it's probably wise to start out in an area where the dog, if they had an accident, it's not going to cause you grief or cost you money or cause problems for you. So if the dog or the puppy is, the first thing you'd want to do is you don't bring the dog in and introduce them to your environment when the dog's full of energy and hasn't been burned off. The best time to bring your dog in and have them interact with you on your space is after they've been out and ran around and did this, and now they're going to want to chill out a little bit and just kind of like be a little more mellow. So if you bring in a dog that's already been active, and you go sit on your couch and you got a space where the dog can sit on the couch if you want to allow that, well, and let the dog put his head on your lap, well, and you stroke the dog a little bit, well, the dog's probably going to just chill out and maybe take a nap, and it's just going to love it. And you're going to have great success because the dog's going to be mellow and already the energy's been burned off. And so if you do that for an hour or something, and then you bring the dog back and you praise the dog when they do good, well, you're going to find that you have much better success. Another thing to do is if you've got, what I would suggest is the first time you're bringing your dog into an environment would be to have it definitely set up so that you will have success. So you don't have lots of distractions, and you don't have anything that the dog's going to pee on or poop on that's going to ruin. And so you've got an area that you're going to be able to sit down or be able to interact with the dog, and there's not going to be any real issues where anything that dog does is going to be a problem. Now you're going to have success. And the idea, and I'm not saying you got to have just a bare room with nothing, but you have some things. And the best idea that I would suggest would be to just sit back and observe what the dog does. And so when you introduce the dog into the environment, if you see the dog just is walking over and everything's okay, like let's suppose you've got hardwood floors and there's really nothing that's going to, there's some couches and stuff, nothing you're really worried about. Well, you watch the dog and you see what the dog's going to do. And the dog's probably going to go in and be kind of shy and timid and walk around a little bit and sniff and look and see what's going on. Well, you definitely want to pay attention to what that dog is doing. You got to observe the dog. And I would only correct behavior that needs to be corrected. So the best thing is you introduce him into the environment and just see what happens. For instance, suppose you have 3 dogs already and you bring in a new puppy. Well, see what happens. There's a good chance that your dogs that you already have, they're going to be in certain spots and they're going to be chilling out and laying down. So you bring in the puppy and you see what happens. What does the puppy do? And if everything is just all okay and peachy king, well, then you don't even have to interject anything in, and your job is already done for you. So basically you create an environment for success, and you keep that environment going, and you have the dog in with you long enough so that you always end with a successful session. And I would say that at the beginning you have very few distractions and you have very little going on. And the more you have the animal come in with you, the more distractions you have, or the more stimulation that's in the room. And as you see the dog can tolerate those things, well, then it's now you've got a dog that's becoming more adjusted to the environment, and one that you can trust more. But it's going to take some time before you're going to be able to leave your puppy or your dog um, just free range in the house. Okay. In fact, it's going to be dependent on the specific animal, and some animals, could take some time, because they're going to be chewing over a period of time, and that's could be from boredom, it could be from teething, but people always think it's got to do with teething, but it's not necessarily teething. It probably has to do with more to do with boredom. So you want to make sure that you've got good chew toys, and when I say good chew toys, you want to make sure there's something that's going to be the dog's interested in. And I find that you want to have a safe toy. When you've got something with strings, or when you have fluffy dog beds that have fabric and the dog starts chewing on the fabric, that's an issue, and they can end up swallowing fabric and strings and end up with bowel obstructions, and that could be like a $10,000 emergency surgery that you don't want to be involved with. I mean, it's traumatic for the dog, it's traumatic for you, plus it costs a lot of money. Um, I'm a little bit disorganized here at this time, because I've got a son that's going to be moving out soon, and I've got a daughter that's staying with me, and we've got a litter of puppies. And I don't know what I said about the daughter, but she's here temporarily with her friends, so that we've got a full house, and I'm storing extra stuff. But so there's a little bit of clutter, and if you look behind me over here, you can see there's a love seat over there, and you can notice that it's chewed up some. Well, obviously that's where some dogs were laying on it, and they decided one day to start chewing it. Well, it's not an issue so much about the cost of the love seat. It's more of an issue with what they're going to do with what they chew. And as I mentioned, you don't want them ingesting that, because that could be an issue. And just putting a cover over it, well, that may seem like an answer, but the reality is then what do? They chew the cover. So that's something you want to keep an eye on, is what are they chewing, and you want to make sure that they are chewing something that's going to be safe. And basically we're talking about, I find that like rubber chew toys, solid rubber, are really pretty darn good, because they can sink their teeth into them and they get satisfaction out of that. So this video is basically about training a puppy, one that you've had, that you've acquired from that's been nurtured by the breeder, or that hasn't been abused, that's really been um, well cared for. My puppies, I teach them from the time they're able to walk. I start teaching them, to sit, and I give them lots of praise and lots of attention, and they really are well adjusted animals when they come to you. Um, in my opinion, you don't want dogs or puppies that are jumping on you, and um, so when you don't want to be. I wouldn't be encouraging that when you've got a large dog like a Doberman. I'm not saying that after you get along farther in your training, or when the dog is quite well adjusted, that you can't teach the dog a trick to, you know, put their paws up or something like that. But I certainly wouldn't be making all kinds of noises and trying to get the dog excited, like what's that, what's going on, and and having them jump up on you when you come home. I would want to have this animal be trained so that when you come in, they pretty much let you walk in and put your belongings, take your coat off and put your hat away and or your purse away or whatever the heck you've got to unload your groceries, and they wait for you until you um, want to give them the attention that they deserve. Um, and so, that starts even when from here as a dog breeder. When I go out in the yard or into the area, when they're very young, they don't know any better, and they start following you around and they start all over your feet. And but you try to teach them no, and you don't want them jumping on you. So when you go into the area, you don't want them like jumping on you with their paws or biting at your feet. So you just discourage that, and it's very simple at a young age. You just say no, and you push their face away a little bit, like, and they learn very quickly. Another negative behavior that ends up happening a lot is the nipping. A lot of times the dogs want to nip. Well, that's not really so hard. When a puppy's wanting to nip, what you do is you take their lip and you push it out against their tooth, and so you just put a little pressure on it, and you do that a couple times, and you say no, and the puppy's going to stop nipping you. It's a pretty simple thing. And any other situation that may arise, any other thing that you want to like stop, it's probably a good idea to have a like a squirt bottle that's filled with water that's got a decent sized spray on it. It's more like a stream rather than a mist. Um, and when you're observing the dog, and when you see that they're going to jump on the table and you don't want them putting their paws on the table or whatever, I mean, that's up to you. But if you don't want your dog putting their paws on the table, and you're a little bit at a distance, well, you can just say no and hit them with a squirt bottle with that stream, and it just catches their attention. And when you say no, they really are cooperative, and they want to be successful, and they want to know. So um, when they want to be rewarded for good behavior, and they want to be rewarded, or they want to be told when they're doing something they're not supposed to be doing. And when they do know, they want to do what they're supposed to do. Um, so we've talked about the spray bottle and the chew toys, dog beds, and we talked about that a little bit also. You want to be careful. You want to make sure that you're paying attention to what your dog is chewing on. Also, I find that we had our puppies get out, or our dogs get out at one point, and we've lived up, and we've got like 100 acres of woods behind us, and it only takes like maybe 1 to 2 minutes, and they're all the way across a mile away, and they could be going across the street. Well, you really don't want your dogs running away, or I don't want my dogs running away. And we have the back porch has got a big farm gate on it, or two farm gates, because there's two entrances to the back porch, and so we've got those on there. So now, if it's summertime and you've got the door open, well, the dogs go out onto the back porch, and they're really confined to the porch. And we also have a farm gate on the front porch also, because there's the railing, and then we've got a big farm gate. So if they go out onto the front porch or the back porch, they're not going to go wandering off or seeing a squirrel and go run up into the woods. But it still is a good idea. The best thing I have found is there's a relatively inexpensive device made by the company, I believe it's called Tractive, and it's a GPS monitoring device, and it's relatively inexpensive. I think you can be, for $100 or less, and the actual GPS service that you would have to go for that's not that expensive either. It's well worth it, even if that's $125. I don't remember what it is, but believe me, all your dog has to be is lost one time, and there's an app that goes directly to your phone, and you can within pinpoint accuracy, you can know exactly where that animal is. So that's really a wonderful thing to have. And one other thing I'd like to touch base on is an electronic training collar. If you got yourself a good one, like a sport dog or something along those lines, they can be a really good tool. Now, I'm not suggesting that people put shock collars on their dogs and turn it up to the highest number and shock their dogs for menial things, because I believe that a dog can be trained without treats. I believe a dog, just by praise and by attention, they really want to please. And so if you develop a good training regimen with your dog, and you are giving the proper praise and the tone of your voice, when you're really pleased, you talk in such a nice way. In fact, I have dogs I just whisper to, and they just love it. And so you're telling them, "Oh, you're such a good girl," and they just are so. You can tell their heart is just melting. Um, and then on the other hand, if you change your voice, and when they're not behaving or when there's something going on, if you are like, "Bad dog," well, all of a sudden they're like, "What's going on? What did I do?" And they're just like, "Whoa." They're backing off. And so that's what you need to do, is have a way to get their attention with a verbal command. But let's get back to the electronic collar. Sport Dog makes a good one, and it's got a noise that you can use. So it's a little noise that goes off, and it's also got a vibration, and it's also got a shock intensity, which can go from like minimal to high intensity. Well, if you've got a dog and you've got to take them off leash, and you've got on or if you've got a yard and you've got woods behind you, or this or that, or even if you're in my scenario, if the dog takes off after a squirrel or something, and the squirrel goes running off, and you don't want your dog to get lost, well, you've got a training collar that you can actually, you call the dog and they're not coming because they're just like focused on that squirrel. Well, now you've got a backup plan. So I would suggest that you do some research about that and decide if you think it's a good idea for you. Because, I mean, basically, you're the one that would have the dog and the puppy, and you're the one that would be responsible for training the dog. And, you want to have, I would think that if you've got a companion that's going to be with you for as many years, and believe me, these dogs can be so loving and loyal. Madonna, come here, sweetie. Hey, Bruno Mars. How you doing, buddy? Huh? Yes, you're a good boy. Yes, you're a good puppy, aren't you? Okay, that's good. Hey, sweetie. Madonna, come here. Come here. Come on over. Hi. You're such a good girl, aren't you? Yeah. So, an animal, sit. Sit. Huh? Good boy, Bruno Mars. Anyhow, they live to please, and so when you give positive verbal commands with lots of pleasure, your dog's going to respond in a nice, caring, responsive way. And when there's some situation where you need to be in a panic because the dog's going to be running out into the road or something, or you need to be able to give a verbal that will be like, "Whoa, what's going on?" and stop the dog in their tracks. And I have many dogs in my possession at this time, and believe me, when I say something like, "What's this?" in a little bit louder tone, the dogs are going off into crates and like, "Uh-oh, what's going on?" And they're like, So, anyhow, the best thing I can say is you want to create an environment for success. You need to positive enforcement, and have a way to deal with negative behaviors. And you've got to burn off the energy. You've got to in a positive way. That energy's got to be burned off. And you want to work with your dog in a training session after the dog's had some exercise, because they're going to be more cooperative. They're not going to be fighting. For instance, if you take your dog for a long walk, you'll notice that after you've gone 3 miles, and you're on your way home, the dog isn't pulling on the lead as much, and the dog is like um, is going to be much more cooperative when you're coming home than when you're first leaving. So if you're going to be taking a dog, work them out for a while. Throw that frisbee, throw that, then take them for a walk, and they're gonna be more cooperative. And if you're using a choke chain, which I suggest is a good tool also, you want to make sure that you get it up high. You get it up right up next to the chin, and you've got it up close, so that it's working effectively. You don't want to just be having, jerking dogs for that. You've got to know how to use these devices properly, and I'm sure you can look up how to use a choke chain. But anyway, I just wanted to give some tips on I believe after years and years and years of doing training and obedience training way back when, it's unbelievable because now there's like very little negative enforcement that needs to be done when I train a dog. Um, they learn just because they're with you and you tell them what you want, and they know by your tone and by your, because like I said, if you do get a puppy from me, the puppies are going to know right away that no, don't jump on me, this and that, and they're gonna know to sit already. And not saying that they're going to be perfect at it, but your puppies will be trained already to know how to sit. And when you want to teach your dog how to sit, the best thing to do is you put your hand underneath their chin and you say sit, and you lift up a little bit on the chin. And when you do that, they're just naturally going to want to sit, and then you give them praise. So I would go with the praise over the treats, and I'm not saying you can't use treats, but praise goes a long ways. And I hope that these tips and pointers help you, and leave me some feedback, and I would appreciate it. So good luck with your endeavor, and Godspeed.